John was a young boy who always felt like an outsider. Growing up, he was constantly bullied and made fun of by his classmates. They called him names and excluded him from their group activities. John couldn't understand why they didn't like him. He was kind and friendly, but that didn't seem to matter. He always felt like he didn't fit in, and he didn't know why. The bullying was a constant presence in his life, and it took a toll on him. He started to believe that there must be something wrong with him, and that's why he was being rejected. He thought that maybe he wasn't good enough for anyone to like him. He didn't know what he could do to change it, but he knew that he wanted to be accepted. He wanted to have friends and be a part of something, but it seemed impossible. John tried to ignore the bullying and focus on his studies, but it was hard. He couldn't shake off the feeling of rejection and loneliness. He didn't have anyone to talk to, and he felt like he was all alone in the world. He couldn't understand why no one wanted to be his friend, and it broke his heart. He knew that he had to find a way to make it stop, but he didn't know how. John's life was a constant struggle, and he didn't know if it would ever get better. He just had to hope that one day, things would change and he would finally find acceptance. John's feelings of rejection and loneliness only grew stronger as he got older. He had no friends and no one to talk to. He felt lost and alone in the world, with no one to turn to. He didn't know what he could do to change his situation. He tried to make friends, but it seemed like no one wanted to be his friend. He felt like he was invisible and that no one cared about him. He tried to find solace in his studies and hobbies, but even that didn't bring him the happiness he was looking for. He felt like he was stuck in a never-ending cycle of rejection and loneliness. He couldn't understand why he was being punished like this. He was a good person, and he didn't deserve to be treated this way. John's self-esteem was at an all-time low, and he didn't know how to pick himself up. He felt like he would always be alone and rejected by the world. He didn't know what his purpose was, or if he even had one. He felt like he was just going through the motions of life, without any real direction or purpose. He couldn't help but wonder if this was all there was to life. Was he doomed to a life of loneliness and rejection? He didn't know, but the thought of it was unbearable. He knew that he had to find a way to change his situation, but he didn't know how. He felt lost and alone, with no way out. As John grew older, he started to develop feelings for a girl in his class. Her name was Sarah, and she was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She was kind, smart, and had a great sense of humor. John couldn't help but feel drawn to her. He knew that she would be the perfect girl for him. He tried to talk to her and make friends, but she was always surrounded by her group of friends. He knew that it would be hard to get her to notice him, but he was determined to try. He tried to be friendly and funny, hoping that she would see that he was a good guy, but she never seemed to notice him. John was heartbroken, knowing that his feelings were not reciprocated. He couldn't understand why Sarah didn't see him the way he saw her. He knew that he was a good person, and that he deserved to be loved. He couldn't understand why he couldn't get her to see that. He knew that he had to move on, but it was hard. He couldn't stop thinking about her, and it was affecting his daily life. He knew that he had to find a way to get over her, but he didn't know how. He couldn't help but wonder if he would ever find love, or if he was meant to be alone forever. John's unrequited love for Sarah only added to his feelings of rejection and loneliness. He couldn't help but feel like the world was against him and that he was never going to find happiness. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that he had to keep trying. He couldn't give up on love and acceptance just yet. John's 18th birthday was approaching, and he didn't expect anything special to happen. He thought it would just be another day of feeling rejected and alone. But little did he know that his birthday would bring a surprise that would change his life forever. On his 18th birthday, John received a letter in the mail. It was from a lawyer, who informed him that he was the heir to a kingdom, and that he was the only living descendant of the royal family. John was shocked and couldn't believe what he was reading. He had never heard of this kingdom before, and he didn't know anything about his supposed royal heritage. He thought it must be a mistake, but the lawyer assured him that it was not. John soon found out that his parents had kept this a secret from him his entire life, and that they were not his biological parents. They had adopted him when he was a baby, and they were tasked with keeping his true identity a secret until he was of age. John couldn't believe it. He had always felt like he didn't belong in the world, but now he knew why. He was meant to be a king, and that was something that he never thought was possible. He felt like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders and that he finally had a sense of purpose. He knew that it would take time for him to adjust to his new life, but he was excited for the opportunity. He couldn't wait to take his rightful place on the throne and to make a difference in the kingdom. He knew that it would be a long and difficult journey, but he was ready for it. John's birthday surprise was a turning point in his life, and it gave him a new perspective. He realized that his rejection and loneliness were not a punishment, but rather a path to his true destiny. He couldn't wait to see what the future held for him, and he knew that with this new opportunity, he would finally find acceptance and happiness. John was excited to take his place as the rightful heir to the kingdom. He knew that it would be a challenging journey, but he was determined to make a difference and to be a good ruler for his people. The first step was for John to claim the throne and to prove his identity as the true heir. He had to provide evidence of his heritage and to convince the council of nobles that he was the rightful king. It was not an easy task, but John was determined to prove himself. He spent many months researching his family tree and gathering evidence of his royal bloodline. John also had to learn about the kingdom and its history, so that he could be an effective ruler. He spent many hours studying maps, reading about the economy, and learning about the different cultures and customs of his people. He knew that he had to be well informed in order to make the right decisions for the kingdom. The council of nobles was impressed by John's determination and his knowledge of the kingdom. They were convinced that he was the true heir, and they agreed to crown him as king. John was overjoyed when he was finally crowned king. It was a dream come true, and he felt like he belonged in the world for the first time in his life. He was determined to be a good ruler and to make a difference in the kingdom. He knew that it would be a long and difficult journey, but he was ready for it. John's coronation was a historic moment for the kingdom, and it was the start of a new era. The people were excited to have a new ruler, and they had high hopes for the future. John knew that he had a lot of work to do, but he was determined to make a positive impact and to lead his kingdom to prosperity. John quickly realized that being a king was not an easy task. He was faced with many challenges, and he had to make difficult decisions. The kingdom was in a state of turmoil, and it was his responsibility to bring stability and prosperity to his people. John's first challenge was to address the kingdom's economic crisis. The kingdom's economy was in shambles, and the people were suffering. John knew that he had to take immediate action, and he formed a team of advisors to help him come up with a plan. They worked tirelessly to come up with a solution, and in the end, they were able to turn the economy around. Next, John had to deal with the kingdom's security issues. The kingdom was plagued by bandits and thieves, and the people were living in fear. John knew that he had to take action, and he formed a team of soldiers to hunt down the bandits and bring them to justice. He also implemented new security measures to protect the people from further attacks. John also had to deal with the kingdom's political issues. There were many factions vying for power, and it was his responsibility to keep the peace and to make sure that everyone was treated fairly. He spent many hours listening to the concerns of the different groups, and he worked to find a solution that would satisfy everyone. John's leadership and determination were put to the test, but he rose to the occasion. He was able to address the kingdom's problems and to bring stability and prosperity to his people. He was determined to be a good ruler and to make a positive impact on his kingdom. The people of the kingdom were impressed by John's leadership, and they were grateful for his hard work. They could see that their new king was a true leader, and they had high hopes for the future. John knew that he still had a lot of work to do, but he was determined to continue making a difference in his kingdom. John's journey to the throne had helped him to find his purpose and to finally feel accepted by the world. He had always felt like an outsider, but now he knew that he was meant to be a king, and that was something that he never thought was possible. He finally felt like he belonged in the world, and he had a sense of direction and purpose. He felt fulfilled by his role as king, and he was determined to make a positive impact on his kingdom. He knew that he had a lot of work to do, but he was excited for the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of his people. He was also able to find acceptance among his people, and he was respected and loved by his subjects. John also found acceptance in his own self. He realized that he was not defined by the rejection and bullying that he had experienced in his past. He was a capable and strong person who had the ability to make a difference in the world. He let go of the negative thoughts and feelings that had held him back, and he embraced his new identity as a king. John's newfound purpose and acceptance also affected his relationships. He was more confident and assertive, and he was able to form stronger and more meaningful relationships with others. He was able to let go of his unrequited love for Sarah, and he was able to find love with someone who appreciated him for who he was. John's journey to the throne had been a long and difficult one, but it had led him to find his purpose, acceptance, and happiness. He knew that he still had a lot of work to do, but he was excited for the future and what it held for him and his kingdom. John's journey to the throne had been a long and difficult one, but it had led him to find his purpose, acceptance, and happiness. He had faced many challenges as a king, but he had risen to the occasion and had brought stability and prosperity to his kingdom. He had become a respected and loved leader, and he had fulfilled his destiny as a ruler. During his reign, John implemented policies and programs that improved the lives of his people. He invested in the economy, which led to an increase in jobs and a higher standard of living. He also strengthened the kingdom's security, which led to a decrease in crime and an increase in safety. He also worked to promote equality and justice, which led to a more peaceful and harmonious society. John also focused on building strong relationships with the neighboring kingdoms. He formed alliances and traded with them, which led to an increase in wealth and prosperity for his kingdom. He also sent emissaries to other kingdoms to foster peaceful relations and to promote mutual understanding. John's reign was marked by prosperity, peace, and progress. He had fulfilled his duty to his kingdom and his people and had become an effective and respected ruler. He had shown that with hard work, determination, and a strong will, anyone can achieve their goals and make a positive impact on the world. John's reign came to an end, but his legacy lived on. He was remembered as a just and compassionate ruler who had brought prosperity and peace to his kingdom. He had fulfilled his destiny as a king and had left a lasting impact on his people and his kingdom. His rule and reign had been a success, and he had proven that with hard work and determination, anyone can rise to the occasion and make a difference in the world.